Hi, this is Ed Rising, and welcome back to Ed's Pop-O-Matic Podcast, a retro pop culture podcast. And today we have two people in the Beatles world that have contributed with books and with presentations, um, very much focused around the novelty records that the Beatles uh, were inspired and what came out of their initial Beatlemania period. And of course, we can get into other things, whatever you want. But let me introduce my guests. We have Terry Crain and my friend Bob Koenig. And so we're going to talk a little bit about your impressions. Both of you are either first generation or close to first generation fans.
I'm first.
First and first, right?
Well, kind of in first. I saw the Beatle cartoons. I was on my mother's lap when they were on the Ed Sullivan show.
That's like me. Right, right.
And I saw Yellow Submarine when it came out in the theater. And by then I was hooked. I was young, but I was already buying, records and albums,
Right. So I'm going to start off with Terry a little bit, and we'll talk about his impressions of the early Beatlemania period, and then we'll kind of go to you, and we'll talk a little bit about how you got onto it, and then how you began. I imagine getting involved with collecting and appreciating the novelty type records and exploration of the Beatles.
Sure.
Okay.
I saw them on Ed Sullivan when I was 8, in the front room on the black and white screen there, and loved them ever since. My sister had uh, the George doll, the little Roomco doll that was George. She had that in her room. She was older than I am, so every time I would walk down the hall, I would see this George doll from the hallway, and I swore it was staring at me and all this. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? Well, that is stuck with me forever here, and I find that like authors do, I find that I gravitate towards certain genres or certain things, and I must admit, I like the wild and wacky stuff. I'm the guy that did the book about the NIM stuff and the dolls and the games and the jewelry and all the wacky stuff, the
Awesome.
bath stuff, all that kind of stuff. That the stuff that was all over the shelves at Woolworths and Ben Franklin and all that kind of stuff,
Yes.
where the record player was on the top shelf because it was a little bit heavier and it was $29 and it was expensive. But that's the kind of stuff I like. So I have realized that gravitating now, as kind of a sidebar, towards novelty records, it's the same stuff. It's the same wild and wacky and weird stuff, just like the regular dolls and everything. So it's right up my alley. So now I'm going down that road, and I'm doing a book on the novelty records. There were between 1964 and 66, there were about 500 Beatle novelty records. And it's like, you got to be kidding. But so, and I know how I am. When somebody tells me there's 500, well, I'm looking for the list. Well, there wasn't a list. And that was the worst thing they could tell me because I knew I had to find or make that list. So that's what I'm working on now. I got about 480, 490 now. So I figure I'm pretty close to what it was.
Yeah, you're getting
Now,
there.
the exploitation stuff, which was a whole nother, I think, genre along the same line. Bob is the expert, so I'm gonna let him tell you
So
about
we're
that
going to
one.
let Bob talk about that.
Oh my
Before we get
gosh.
to Bob, just quickly, um, Terry is the author of NEM's The Business of Selling the Beatles, and so that's
That's
a
is my
huge volume. Oh, and
product
now it's in
placement.
second edition.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember I met Terry a number of times,
Mhm.
and Fest for Beatles fans. He was showing me his books, and I'm telling you, you must have heard here carrying those known things around because I mean, this is huge. You know.
Good stuff.
It is good stuff. And I met Bob a couple of months ago. He does a presentation. He's done it mostly on Long Island, from what I'm aware of. I'm sure Bob can
So
elaborate on
far,
that.
I'm trying to branch out, but
And
that's it
essentially,
so
it's
far.
on the exploiting of the Beatles, of the recordings that became available, and he's going to go into that a bit further. And he's got some shows that are going to be coming up next year, and so that's exciting. And it's a very very entertaining show, and so I kind of also thought that Terry and Bob would be kind of cool to make this presentation tonight. So, Bob, could you take it away? Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the Beatles, and why you are so interested in the that early period.
Yes, sadly, I gave it away a little bit by what I said in the intro. I didn't realize, but
Quite all right.
um, no, I loved cartoons, and of course, I saw the Beatle cartoon back then. Um, and music was the thing around the house. My uncle played hundreds of different instruments, so that was always there. But the Beatles, I don't know, it was something about it just attracted me, and then it cemented once I saw Yellow Submarine. I can still picture that day of going to see it back, when it came out.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny to have this as the genre that I've chosen on discussing is because technically my real first ever Beatle album is this Chipmunk Sing the Beatles, and this is the exact same copy. What's funny is it's on Sunset, not Liberty, so it's like a budget copy of it. In fact, the record I think is more shellac than it is vinyl.
That's funny. So when I first saw you, you were showing that record and many others. Now, my understanding is that VJ or Swan had the contract, and then they were able to sell it out to sub companies within them to create these various different records.
Right. Well, a lot of these novelty records, um, especially on the budget labels, I don't think they even tried to get some sort of an approval with it. They just went ahead and do it to make a buck. I mean, when you look at the listing of, was it April '64, the top five singles were all Beatles singles,
Yeah,
and each one pretty much was a different record label. Even
yeah,
though Tolly is the same as VJ, who knew that? So
yeah,
there was Tolly, VJ, Swan, and then some bubbling around was MGM and Adco, and all these different labels, and these other companies are like, hey, if they're all trying to get a hand on getting a Beatle dollar, we want to also. So
right,
they
right.
quickly rushed some band that probably knew nothing about the Beatles into the studio for like 10 minutes to record a version of the song. And that's what some of them sound like. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty
now,
amazing when you use some of those things that you do. And so anyone that goes out to see Bob at these presentations, it's a hell of a show, and you get to hear
thank
some
you.
really wild stuff, you know. And you make a mention about the business of going out there and just having people coming in and creating all these different records without even taking into account about, whether they would have the rights to it. Terry has talked to me about uh, the copyright issue,
Yeah.
and
And
I believe you have a book on the copyrights, correct?
Wonderful.
I do. And I was going to segue right over to what Bob said. When I was doing the research for all the Beatles and Beatles related copyrights between 64 and 66 out in the Library of Congress, I kept running into novelty records and some other records that were out there that was copyrighted. So I thought, oh, well, this novelty record thing, maybe I'll look into that someday. So I documented all the copyrights I could find between 64 and 66. And within that, there were 300 novelty records copyrighted. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I had always heard then there were about 500 novelty records. And I thought, well, where's the other 200? Well, you know what they did? They did just what Bob said. They didn't care. They went in and cut the record and put it out, and they thought maybe nobody will legally get us because the Beatles
yeah,
won't be hot very long. They won't last 6 months or 4 months or three. So we'll put this novelty record out. make some money real quick. We were not even going to worry about copyright on it and just see what we can do. So that segues right into what he says. And I was going to say
Right.
one thing else about what Bob said is the novelty record. The average Beatle novelty record, the average shelf life for that was 2 weeks. Okay, that's all it was 2 weeks on the shelf. And I read an article once about the guy from I think it was the Bugs, and he said they saw Ed Sullivan on Sunday night. Okay, so Monday morning he goes in and writes a novelty song. Tuesday he teaches it to the band. Wednesday the band learns it and does all this stuff. Thursday, they do some minor tweaking about it and all that. Friday, they design the label, press the label down on the record, and by Saturday, it's on the shelves at Woolworths. Now, you talk
Amazing.
about pretty quickly. And
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
really, Bob, that's kind of what happened to some of your albums there.
Right. Right. And there's also different extremes with that, like what you're saying. Like one I could think of is now everybody knows who Santo and Johnny are, right?
Mhm, mhm.
How do you go exploiting this where everywhere it says the Beatles' greatest hits? It's got their picture here, true, but when you turn this over, here's the Beatles on the back. So doesn't it look like they gave the thumbs up on putting this out?
You would think
Exactly.
so.
And it's not only that, but if somebody fails to notice this, they might just see this.
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
It,
And that's
it,
the thing that a lot of these records were banking on. I don't know if that's the same with the novelty records. I think the kids used to pick up the 45s. It
yeah.
was the adults that bought the albums.
Yep.
So when when let's say Susie asks her dad, when you're at the A&P or the local five and dime or even a department store, can you get that Meet the Beatles album for me? It's the guys with the long hair and it's in the dark looking cover. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll see. I'll see if I see it. You know that song I listen to. Yeah, you play it all day. Of course I'll look for it. He goes to the store and he sees Meet the Beatles is 2.99. But when he's up at the counter, there's a little budget bin of stuff. And adults used to buy a lot of those things. You'd have soundtrack copies of Man of La Mancha or Sound of Music. You had copies of like even a Mitch Miller type of thing. It was a variety of records that came out like that. But this is like one of the first times that something like this came out. You didn't see a lot of Elvis records like this. You didn't see the Four Seasons like this. You didn't see Dion and the Belmonts like this. So this was something new. So when the father goes to the counter and he sees this, well, isn't that those guys in that shade with that bug name and it's shaded? There you go. And look at the back cover, right? I mean, that's
Right.
that's so that's so blatant. I mean, this is like the perfect one to show. I mean, I
Yeah.
I pulled out a few of my collection, but this one is the one that sold the most, I believe.
You know
Well,
what?
that's
And I'm going to encroach just a second
Yeah,
on
of
Bob's
course.
territory because when I do my presentation on novelty records, I do talk about 1 minute on exploitation, and this is the one I talk about because I think this is the perfect exploitation record. And Bob, you can correct me if I go along with this here because the first it says this is by the Bugs. Well, this was not recorded by the Bugs. The Bugs had nothing to do with this record. All right, well, we'll go, okay, all right, well, then this must be the Bugs on there. No, that's not the Bugs either. We're not even sure who these guys
Guys
are.
are right.
But they're there. And we go, well, then this must be right. The original recorded in England. No, it was recorded where,
New
Bob?
Jersey.
That's
Detroit.
exactly right. Now,
New
what the thing
Jersey.
the thing I love the most, and that's the cover, but the thing I love the most is actually this was done by I think it was the Coachman Five is who actually recorded
That's
these
it.
songs. But when the Coachman Five recorded these songs, these 10 songs that are on here that have these nice Liverpool style lyrics and everything and titles. Those weren't the titles of the songs. Okay,
No, not at all.
they just recorded, like "Hey My Girl," blah 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 blah. So what does the company do? They go, wait, those titles don't sound like Liverpool, England type titles. They changed every
Just
title
retitle
of
everything.
the whole thing. So London Town Swing, there's no London Town Swing out there. Or Liverpool Drag, nope, it was some other. They just decided to change the title. They didn't change the music. It's
One of the
still
songs on there is "Just One Look" that the Hollies and Doris Troy did. It's
exactly.
not listed that that's on there.
Is that so? That's the perfect, because it's like nothing is correct, but what that's what makes it so cool. There's nothing
Well,
correct,
that's
but
all
it's
the
so cool.
marketing. So my question
Exactly.
to you, Terry, is that now this band that actually did make the record, right? Were they actually aware that they were making an exploited record? Were they? This is the songs we came up with.
No.
Some guys said, "Yeah, we could record these songs. We could release these." And now what are we getting? What do we get?
Bob, I have heard, and you can correct me, I have heard that the Coachman Five, when they did that, had no idea. They didn't even know where the tapes went. The tapes just disappeared. And I think it was Cornet Records, I believe is who it was. They just disappeared. And they
Yeah.
didn't even know the songs came out until somebody played that record later on.
Yeah,
Does that
that's what
sound about
happened with
right?
most of that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
It's
no,
pretty
Ed, they didn't
amazing.
even know that.
That's pretty amazing, you know.
like what
And yeah.
like what you're saying. So, some of them are so outrageous. I don't know how many record covers you want to show on the screen. Had you ever seen this one, the Beagle and the Liverpool?
For Liverpool wings or wigs.
So there's a band with the Beagle on it. The band has the Beetle wings on.
Oh, that's
Now,
funny.
talk about absurd. Most of the songs on here, and I mentioned Dion and the Belmonts before, and I mean this with the ultimate respect, is that
Mhm.
every song on here sounds kind of like a Dion and the Belmonts sort of record, except that they do "I Want to Hold Your Hand."
Yeah.
And let me tell you, first of all, it's not the same people playing it, but this version of "I Want to Hold Your Hand," I played it the other night at my presentation. It is so bad. It sounds like, it was recorded in the high school bathroom. I mean, I don't even think there was a full drum set on it. I mean, that's how bad it is. It's like that rushed. And this is what was out there.
Yeah, but isn't that part of the draw we have for that? You want to say they're so bad they're great, which is like a lot of these things. They're so bad they're great.
Well, the reason a lot of these survived, several of the ones that I've found over the years, either have like the girls wrote their names on the back, or they took newspaper clippings and taped them over the cover because they wanted to hide the fact that it really wasn't a Beatle album, but because, I don't know, let's say Aunt Jane bought it for them, they felt so bad about trying to get rid of it, they decided to keep it as part of their collection. Or in the case of some of these things, it was, well, um, it was technically my very first Beatle record, like what I said
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
Chipmunks. So
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it. It's my first Beatle record.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But you always kind of think it's kind of funny for little Johnny or little Debbie, whoever, daddy or mommy you're buying the record for. They come back with one of these records, and they're like, "This is my home." And now we have a very dejected and very despondent and probably considering the age, very uh, temper
Yeah.
tantrum oriented child because this
And
is not what we wanted, you know.
But what
exactly.
I want to know from Terry is, now, like I said, the albums, and absurd as some of the covers are, they
Yeah.
were made for the adults to see and decide to pick up. I don't think most teens would have been deceived by these.
No,
I
no, yeah.
agree.
Yeah, you make a
But
I
good
agree
point, Pop. Yeah.
100%.
who bought the novelty singles?
Just not very many. As you find out as you go along, there were a first one at the up front that maybe made number they broke the top 90 or they broke the 80. And then you had We Love You Beatles that got all the way to
Right.
30, 40s and 40s and all that. But after that, because I've looked at the Billboard charts from 64 on, they don't even get near that. It was just, it's just an amazing, amazing thing. The thing I think about the novelty records is, and I call a novelty record uh, something that the subject is Beatles or Beatles related, something like that. Now, like the album that we were looking at, if there is a song on here that has nothing to do with the Beatles, but it was about the Beatle beat, or it was by the American Beatles or something like that. I don't include those in novelty records because that the song itself, I think the song didn't have anything to do with that. But if they did Liverpool Drag or something like that, I'll include that. But I don't really know who, but they just kept churning them out. What intrigues me about the novelty records is even though there was that many of them, I call it the lineage. It's the people who, when you research these, who did novelty records. You got Ella Fitzgerald. You got Cher, who did one. You got
Right.
Glenn Campbell and Leon Russell, who were behind some of those. You got David Gates of Bread. You got Dozer Holland Dozer from Big Motown and all that. You got Sissy Spacek, who went on to be Carrie in the movies and all that. She does a
Was that
novelty.
John? You went too far this
That's
time.
John. You went too far. What a great. Oh, and I'm sorry. She wasn't Sissy Spacek then. She was Rainbow. That's what she did the song there on. You've got that Dr. John. He was in the right place at the right time, but he also did a novelty record. You have all these people. You have, and that's what my presentation is, shows you these people. You have Fred Ebb that does a novelty record. Well, Fred Ebb, he's a writer. Nobody knows really Fred Ebb, and he says, well, this didn't work out at all. So what does Fred Ebb do? Fred Ebb goes on and writes Cabaret, and he goes on and writes the musical for Chicago, and he goes on and writes this theme from New York, New York. Yes,
About
Wow.
start
that, huh?
spreading the news. That's the
Fantastic
guy.
song.
And he, by golly, has a novelty record. So
I do like that.
it's people like that you find in the backgrounds. And I'll tell you a story later about one of them that I found that was pretty interesting. But that's what I like about the song. The songs, some of them are great, some of them are horrible. Some of them, the more you listen to, you go, that's not bad, really. But it's
But
just,
what's interesting about the Beatles is that they inspire and they influenced so much of the time period. And and as you guys were saying, for what probably was being considered a very short time where they could take advantage
mhm.
of that Beatles hysteria, to actually create something out of it. The Beatles music had to be really good. I mean, and of course it was, but and of course it took the attention of the adolescents and maybe young adults and young 20s audience at the time. But to actually look at those songs, even you read reviews of even classical composers and I forget the name. Was it I forget the name of the big classical the guy that does orchestrations, um, talking about how great the Beatles' writing was and where their songs were. There was a lot more to their structure than
Oh,
just
Leonard
simple
Bernstein.
songs.
Mhm.
Leonard Bernstein, thank you very much. And that gave the Beatles the credence. It gave them the influence around the music world. And so for someone then to come along and saying, well, okay, we want to create something out of this that's might be beneficial to us, or we can build on something that the Beatles have done, it's pretty amazing because you're looking at all these novelty type records and exploitive records. They weren't doing it on Freddie and the Dreamers. They weren't doing it for the Rolling Stones, even. They weren't doing it for Peter Noone and the Herman's Hermits. It was
Right.
basically all around the culture shock that was the Beatles. Um,
Yeah.
when Terry, when I saw you at Fest for Beatles fans a couple of years ago, you did a tremendous presentation on these novelty type records.
Thank you.
First of all,
Thank
I
you.
suggest that you'd go out and you do this. Like Bob goes out and he does all these
Yeah.
wonderful presentations. I think you should go out and do the same little thing
It
with
get, it
your
gets
presentation.
it gets fun, doesn't it? And
It
I know
does.
Bob, I'm sure has fun with his because people are just they sit there and they're just astonished sometime, and they
And the
Well,
one
it's
thing I
like,
got, yeah,
I'm
I'm sorry,
sorry.
Bob, go ahead.
When friends would come over, I'd pull out a bunch of records and I'd talk about them and we'd play a little bit and do this. So it's basically like what I would do at home. It's just like what a collector's thing would do. You're just passing along the information.
That's and you got to
exactly.
pass it down also, because it's amazing we have so many people in the younger generations that are getting into the Beatles
Mhm.
and enjoying it in a whole different way than you and I or the three of us in were able to experience it from the time that we were very young. Because now they have not only all the Beatles records uh, to be able to listen and choose and hear it in a different ways, and all the different expansion CDs that they've made and well, CDs in general, going to different records, different bootlegs that have become available, or something that's
Oh, I have a lot
uh,
of that.
become fully realized as official releases. All the what Peter Jackson did with Get Back, and now the upcoming revised anthology.
Technology.
Yeah.
And you're talking about all the solo materials as well. And so they have this wonderful opportunity to be able to enjoy the music in a very different way than us. And I had a point. Not quite sure where that point was, but
We got it.
yeah, one of the things about the novelty records that presentation that you made, Terry, is that the impressions that we got was that the records weren't just made to gain a few bucks. A lot of it was actually real tributes to what the Beatles meant at the time and to the fun aspect of their personalities and the results of their film, particularly A Hard Day's Night, and the sound that the Beatles made. And so it was actually it had something to it more so than just being out there to make a buck.
Yeah, one of the biggest times that people sat down to write novel records was what I said a while ago. The night of Ed Sullivan or the next day or a few days after that. There's because when I did the copyright books, man, there's people taking copyrights out all that week after the Ed Sullivan about Beatles this, Beatles this, Beatles this. And
Mhm.
one of the things that you said earlier, I wanted to expand on just a little bit. I'm not sure, even to this day, 61 years later and all this, I'm not sure people fully understand the impact that they had on this. I'm going out there, as you said, looking at the copyrights, and I'm documenting all these Beatles or Beatles related document copyrights that people took out. In 64, there were people writing poems and they'd go copyright it. They'd draw a picture of Ringo and they'd go copyright it. They wrote what they thought was a great television script and they'd write something about it. They'd draw a pencil piece like this that was horrible, but by golly, they went and copyrighted because they knew someday they were going to make $1 million off of this picture that they did of Ringo. And during the 64 through 66, there were over 900 copyrights about the Beatles in the
Yes.
Library of Congress, which is just nuts. And whatever you could think of, people thought of how they could maybe make a buck, or they were yes writing that poem because they loved the Beatles. They wanted to do that novelty record because they loved the Beatles. They wanted to make that sculpture and all that because they loved John or George and all that. So you are right. A lot of times it was what they wanted to do. It was their passion at the moment, and they
Yeah.
wanted to express themselves.
Yeah, that's good. And then to have been able to inspire that is just an amazing thing that I hope that John, Paul, George, and Ringo personally will be able to, were able to take that into their lives and really realize that they did touch people. You know,
Yeah, and you know, I talk about the 500 Nolly records on all that. Ed, my gosh, those exploitation albums, you know, I had a clue, but I didn't have a clue until I saw Ed's thing on one of this. There's stacks of them, Ed, Bob, don't you
Bob.
think?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
There's stacks of them out there that he always shows in his presentation, I believe.
But all this stuff, it's so interesting. I mean, we could go into different genres. Like, you know how we just lightly mentioned bootlegs. You know how some bootlegs thought L.S. Bumblebee was the Beatles, or Have You Heard the Word was the Beatles. Um, I have a tape somewhere where radio stations were playing like this group Grapefruit, that the Beatles actually had them in their Apple publishing. And over the song, it would say Beatles exclusive, because the stations were trying to find anything that even sounded something similar to put up, so that maybe some extra listeners, Dave, you got to listen to WFMU because they got the new exclusive Beatles song. I never heard this before. They would do things like that. So there's even that sort of mini genre. But when you go into your records, like your novelty records, um, I think of the ones that I have the most actually are the Paul is Dead clues. So you're
Oh,
talking about going all the way to 1969 that they
yeah,
were still coming out.
they were still
Uh,
coming out. Yeah.
wasn't there a John Lennon and the Bleachers Ram You Hard or something? So I
Yes,
guess that was sort of about the Ram, and
exactly, exactly.
so
Yeah,
it seems like it never stopped.
exactly. Exactly. Bob, I was going to show you something because I knew we were on the show tonight because your sweatshirt reminded me of this.
Yeah.
I've got from the AP Wire, I've got one of the original photos of the this was the Seifert quadrupeds. The Seifert and they did a AP did a whole thing about them. And look at that. Bob's got the album right there and he's got the
Well, this is that one. Look, 88 cents.
exactly. 88. Isn't that cool?
But
Now,
see, everything had to revolve around this mop top
exactly.
thing.
Exactly. Now, see, Ed, we would have grabbed that off the shelf with those haircuts like that, like
Mhm.
that. If we were in a hurry trying to get in and out of the store, we would have grabbed that off the shelf, and it's
Now,
perfect
somebody
right there.
brought up at my show the other day, if would you consider the Knickerbockers' Lies, or even the Monkeys, well, the Monkeys in general, or like Last Train to Clarksville, to be sort of tribute records or exploitation records?
I don't. I'll let Ed see what he says.
I wouldn't say that they would be exploitation records. I would say the monkeys were inspired by the Beatles.
Right,
Right? They're
right.
inspired by the Beatles and the Marx Brothers.
That's what I would say, even with the Lies. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people thought it was them.
I mean, if the Beatles had not existed, you would not have had the monkeys. That's understood completely.
Right.
But
Yeah.
by the same token, I think that um, you know, they it wasn't like they were trying to duplicate the Beatles sound. I mean, there was some, some songs that do have a similarity. Like, for instance, I would say Day Tripper, Paperback Writer, um, I'm a Believer, uh, kind of, I'm a Believer is kind of a mix of Day Tripper and Paperback Writer. But you could say that pretty much about anybody. I mean, you could look at the Birds period and look at what the Beatles did on Rubber Soul and say, well, now the Beatles are taking the Birds sound, or they're taking more thought-provoking lyrics that Dylan was writing.
Right.
And so
Well,
now
the
where they
Birds were folkies. The Birds
yeah,
became the Birds because they saw A Hard Day's Night.
exactly. And so everybody takes from each other and they create their own thing.
But
And
some
I
of
think
these
that's where
things,
the monkeys came from.
you get like horrendous records like this, which is, first of all, there's a bad band playing a couple of Beatles songs on here, but it's supposed to be like, like the Beatles Story album from Capitol. But it's so off. It's hilarious. It's like I don't know where they they read the idea, they pick it up from the National Enquirer or something. I mean, it's terrible. The story is so bad. And then you have things that, oh, now this one's a mystery to me. So, Terry, if you've ever seen this, it's an album by Gene and the Notes. It has in big here, I Want to Hold Your Hand. It says the Beatles song.
Beatles song.
Everything on here is Beatles. Um, the back cover is the same as the front, and the LP itself really just doesn't show all that much. I don't know if that can be seen,
We can
but
see it. Yeah.
You can see the close
Yeah.
records or whatever.
Globe Records.
Globe
Globe
records, yeah.
Records.
Yeah. But even
But
the album cover looks kind of cool because it sort of looks a little like the Revolver back cover that would come out, years and years and years later. Certainly they weren't able to, but I don't
right,
know,
whether
just
that's Revolver, or I was thinking there's a Beatles sheet music songbook that has like busts of them in gold on the
Yes.
front.
Yes.
It sort
Yes.
of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's cool.
that's a mystery. I found that. I was like, wow, this is a good find. But
Bob,
Now, do you
how many records do you think you've got, Bob? You were talking 25, 30
of
plus?
just this stuff,
Yes.
oh, well over 40. I
Yeah.
have different ones from Canada. I have some from Mexico. You know, all different things.
And see, that's another thing, Ed. It's a well-rounded international thing.
Then you got things like this. I mean, it's on Tower Records. It's actually a subsidiary of Capitol. It actually was the very first budget album on Tower, but I mean, they
you like
actually used
that?
the Beatle pictures. It's all instrumental, except the beginning of "I Feel Fine." They actually cut in the beginning with the feedback, and then
Without
it
the
goes
feedback,
into
yeah,
this
yeah.
instrumental version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. One of the things that that this brings to mind is that, with all the fact that they were not bothering with copyrights, not bothering. I mean, yes, a lot of things were being copywritten automatically to make sure that they could get something on it, and someday they can get their idea in, and they've got a copyright on it. But as Bob indicated, with a lot of these records, they just recorded them, put them out there to make something, make some profit or make some noise about it, and that what they expected to be a short period of time. What about lawsuits, though? Because I can't imagine a Taylor Swift or a Beyonce or somebody like that today having somebody come out and make a similar record
Right, right.
to take advantage of that. They would be sued all over the place, I'm sure, today. Anybody familiar with uh, lawsuits that, let's say, Brian Epstein put against
The only one
companies?
have heard, and hold on a second, because I'm 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 drawing a blank, and I should not draw a blank. My fault. The only one I've heard was the one by the Four Preps, that they did the novelty record, and Brian Epstein heard that one, and he was a little worried that it showed the Beatles as, and I think the quote was money grubbers. I believe that was the quote that on that. And Four Preps was I mean, they were legit. In 64, the Four Preps were legit. So this thing rose to about 86, 85, 80, maybe in the top 70s. And when Brian Epstein, and it was on Capitol Records of all things. And when Brian Epstein made his feelings known about it, the song literally
Disappeared.
disappeared.
Wow.
It was off the shelves. It was not in the Billboard Top 100 the next week. It just was gone. And so that was the only one that I know that, and he had the power to get that thing turned off of there.
Then you kind of figure that if the songs or the whatever the recording or whatever it is that they were coming out with to exploit the idea of the Beatles, essentially, if it wasn't hurting the Beatles,
Yeah.
then it would be too much of a nuisance for them to really go forward with and have lawsuits left and right because they'd never get anything else done.
Exactly. So that's the only one, you talk about 500 records, what I would call 500 novelty. It was the only one that I know of that kind of skirted the lawsuit issues. So that was pretty good, I thought.
Interesting.
And not all the tribute records you're talking about were favorable, right? I mean, you had
Oh,
the Beetle bomb with the
it's-
the insect spray. Uh,
Yeah.
Pop hates the Beatles, or
yeah,
what's
yeah.
that one? I'm bigger than the Beatles.
Oh, that's yeah, that's that. Hold on.
Oh, I got
That's
it
Here he
again.
That's
comes.
Brad Berwick.
There you go. Look at
I'm bigger than the
that.
Beatles. And what a campaign. That's a cardboard campaign they did on that.
Wow.
With his
Oh
new
wow.
release, I'm better than the Beatles. Well, he found out quickly he was
He
not.
wasn't.
So it had another one of those 2 week shelf lives on there. So,
Oh
and
wow.
Bob, what I have found out, and man, I wish I hadn't got into this, but you get the novelty records, and then all of a sudden you think, all right, what am I going to do now? Well, then I find an acetate of I want a Beetle for Christmas. Right here, when you go, well, it's an acetate. I better get that. Well, nobody cares except me. And it's an acetate of a novelty record.
That's
Wow.
not wild.
That's
But that's
I
what
like the
happens.
idea. I don't see any reason to not get that, right? It's good.
That's
Wow.
great. And that's a great idea for a record. I think that's part of your presentation, right, Terry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And I always think it's funny, and Bob, you've run into this, you can't copyright a title. So in December of '64, you had six records calls I Want a Beetle for Christmas. They were six different records. But can you imagine being the disc jockey and somebody calls in and says, I want the Beatles for Christmas. And he goes, which one? Because
Yeah.
it's nuts. It was great though.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool. So, all right. So,
Just have to
Bobby, one you
do
want
the
to share there?
Beatles.
That's a
Do the
great one
Beetle.
right
Oh,
there.
that's like a dance. Yeah.
Yeah,
That must be fun.
It's great.
Yeah.
that one's
So
got the
let me ask
Mexican
you
Beatles
guys
and
as
all
to
kinds
what
of stuff. Go ahead.
let me
Go
ask you
ahead. I'm
guys
sorry.
what you guys got going up, coming up, and things like that. Bob, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing regarding your musicianship, regarding your presentations and so forth, and what we can look
Sure.
forward to?
Well, those interested in seeing my article, I got published in this magazine called Retro Fan, and this issue is the September October 2023 issue, number 28. And there's a couple of pages. What's great is they did such a good job. All these pictures are from pictures I took at home of my collection, and
Oh,
there they are
terrific!
in the magazine. So it really covered a lot. And there I am in bottom corner.
Very cool. And what's it
Records I
called? It's
love,
called what? What is it called? The magazine?
retro fan.
Retro Fan. And you can buy that where? Where? How can you
I
obtain
believe
it?
Barnes and Nobles has it, but
Yeah.
you could always look that up online. I know you can
Yeah,
order
I can
this
do that.
from
Sure.
their website.
Right. Good idea.
No, I had a band called The Keys. We started in the mid '80s. 1988, we were on Dance Party USA, so we were on national TV, and a couple of different local shows, and we played a lot in the Village in New York City, and that happened for a few years. And I have several solo records out as well of different things I do.
Fantastic. You got to keep making the music, you know?
As far as promotion, I'm still some of the library shows are still pending, but I do have one in February. Ed, I sent you the listings, and I don't have them in front of me. I
Yeah.
I know in way coming June 26, 2026, I'm at the Oceanside Library. Oh, in February, I'm at the Malvern Library. I think it was it
Well,
February
hold on. I
28th?
have the I have some information right here my fingertips, literally. We have the Malvern Library, February 26th, Oceanside Library, June 26th, and that's out in Long Island, New York. So if you're in those areas, please go out and see Bob and see these wonderful presentations. And I'm sure you have this all on your Facebook page, and so people can find you there and get updated information. So please do that. It's a
Right,
very
basically on
entertaining
Facebook.
show.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool, Bob. And Bob has been on the podcast the last couple of shows we've done. So I'm glad to have you back again,
it's an honor.
and hopefully again in the future. Right? Cool.
Definitely.
And my friend Terry Crain, we've been buddies for a while now. We met each other 2023 at Fab Fest in North
Mhm,
Carolina.
mhm.
We saw each other again at the Fest for Beatles fans earlier this year. And always a pleasure to chat with you and talk about some of these odd things with the Beatles. And so, could you share a little bit about where people can reach out to you and what you've got on tap and things like that?
Sure. And I have read Bob's article in Retro, and it's wonderful. So everybody needs to go out and get that. And I think you can buy it, like he said, straight from their website. Uh, I've done the last few fests and all that you've seen, taking uh, my NIMS memorabilia book in the US stuff out there, and my copywriting the Beatles, the books that I've done on that. Uh, I'm in one of those middle part now where I don't there's some shows going on now and things coming on the first year. I'm not ready yet. I'm writing my Beatles novelty record book with the 500 novelty records from 64 to 66. I believe, for some reason, and I don't know why this happens to be, my pages just keep expanding in this book. I bet this book is going to be 600 pages, if not more. But when you get
Can't wait.
when you got 500 novelty records and you got a page or more with each one, it adds up quickly. So I believe this will come out next year. I don't know if it'll be early next year or in the summer. So I'll be ready for the shows that come in the middle of the year and next year that I'll be going out with all those. But my website is called fabgear.company. It's not .com, it's .company. And I have the stuff out there about my books and all that kind of stuff like that. And I keep expanding that website also. So uh, I have what I would call, I have a few months more of research to do. And as Bob knows, you get sucked into some of this research stuff. It's hard to get out of
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah, sure.
But I think it's going to be pretty neat because there's just so much out there that we have to put out. And as Bob knows, and Ed, as you know, this stuff is going away. No offense, but everybody's getting older. The people who did this, some of them are no longer with us and all that. And if we don't document this kind of stuff, it's going to go.
Right.
And I learned that the hard way with my NIMS book about the Beatles memorabilia. So that's why we got to get this stuff out there, and that's why
Sure.
I'm keen on getting the
Definitely.
the novelty records out there because it's such a fun thing and a great it's a great genre to go down.
And, as you make a good point, I'm hoping that younger generations who have been embracing the Beatles, as we mentioned earlier, that they'll also look into this angle of Beatles fandom, and be able to appreciate that. So, when a lot of these items are on estate sales or whatever, or things like that, or garage sales, that they will be encouraged to go out there, inspired to go out there and try to find and enjoy these things in their way. So what I'm going to do is when we put this podcast out, and that'll be in a couple of days, I'm going to put a link on there for tomorrows.com, which is where you can buy the retro fan magazine
Oh, yes.
and
Thank you.
things like that. And if there's links for your websites, Terry's website, Bob, if you have a website outside of Facebook, let me know what those are, and I'll put them into into the podcast show
Great.
notes, as they call them. Alrighty. So I want to thank my guests, Bob Koenig and Terry Crain. I want to thank my audience for sticking with us and for all the great views we've been getting on these shows. We had 219 like not likes viewings on the recent Monkeys show we did on the super deluxe version of, if I get this name right, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Jones, and LTD. Uh, that album, that a new version of that came out, and so we had a wonderful show we did on that. We got a lot of hits on that, and that's really great. So thank you, and you can find me, Ed Rising, on Facebook. You can on the, for example, I'm over 65 now, so I have to say the Facebook. Not just kidding. And anyway, no, you can find me there. You can go to YouTube and put my name in there, or Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, and you can find a whole bunch of these videos that we do, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. I thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.